The ceiling fan was annoying, not because of its lack of impact on the heat and humidity in the large courtroom, though this was minimal. Rather, it was annoying because of the sound that it was making. Although the fan turned slowly, the noise from a broken component wasn't consistent. Sometimes it made a knocking sound, sometimes it didn't. There was no discernible pattern to the fan's interruptions. Sergeant George Long was finding it hard not to be distracted. He turned around to see if it was annoying those sitting around him. From what he could see, he was the only one paying it attention. Everyone else was focused on their phones or talking to each other. On closer inspection, those in the courtroom younger than George were all using their phones, while all those older than George were talking to their neighbour or someone across the room, and even in one instance to someone standing outside the courtyard, all in a whisper that could hardly be heard, but it didn't seem to interfere with the conversation taking place. Given his age, George wasn't sure what he should do: use his phone or talk to Constable Jayline sitting next to him. Just as he was almost at a decision, the fan above him clicked noisily, again out of sequence, and he again lost his train of thought. There were a lot of people in the courtroom and more standing outside. These were the smart ones, George thought. Outside there would be a breeze and no fan interrupting their thoughts by an inconsistent knocking. But those inside would hear the judgment first. They would see the accused face the moment the judge declared his guilt or innocence. That is why George was in court. He wanted to see the response. It had been a straightforward investigation that started following a phone call to the Saturday night radio talkback show hosted by Veronique Barney. George still wasn't quite sure how to describe Veronique. She was pregnant, and he was the father. They weren't living together, though they had talked about it. They weren't engaged, as she was still married, but in the process of getting a divorce, so girlfriend sounded trite, but partner seemed too presumptive. Truth be told, he just wanted to marry her and be a normal family. Regardless of how his and Veronique's relationship was labelled, the caller had spoken about a young woman in the community who had been molested by a church pastor and was now pregnant. The caller hadn't said what community it had happened in, but said she was scared that other young women, maybe even girls, might also be assaulted. George had heard the call. He tried to always listen to Veronique's show, even when she was reading the news reports. Before he had met her, the best part of his day was listening to her voice wash over him as she read the news during the week or did a late-night call-in show on Saturday evenings. Even when he was working, he made sure he could hear her. He had a small transistor radio in his office, on his desk, for that very purpose, just to listen to her voice. In any case, the radio station logged the phone number of all callers, and it was this log that Veronique had found the number. George had asked her to either pass on his number so that the caller could contact him directly, or permit Veronique to pass on the number to George so he could call himself. The Vanuatu police force needed to investigate this. The caller, who was the girl's auntie, agreed to meet George and Jayline. They met at George's favourite cafe, and between chocolate thick shakes, pineapple juices, and, inexplicably, a black tea, which George thought the most wasteful drink to buy in a cafe, as it was just a tea bag and boiling water, the aunt explained what had happened. The local pastor had been having sex with the 14-year-old for nearly a year. The girl had finally told the aunt when she became pregnant. She hadn't realised until she began showing. Initially, she wouldn't tell the aunt who the father was, but broke down eventually when the pastor began to come to the house to give private Bible lessons to her cousin, the aunt's 13-year-old daughter.